Hi, good morning all. My name's Harry Longer. I am the marketing coordinator with Bluestream Content Solutions. Thank you for joining today. Today we have Dr. Gabriela Fleischer from tekom and Rahel Bailie from Content Seriously, and we're here to talk about, well, actually, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to push it over to Rahel. Over to you, Rahel. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you for the introduction, Harry. So today we're going to talk about having the right to repair. And this isn't a new concept. Years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting iFixit co-founder Kyle Wiens, and he's been advocating for that right to repair for decades. But advocating is not the same as legislating. And if we watch what's happened with Apple over the decades, you know what I'm talking about. So now we have this firm reason for manufacturers to sit up and take notice because there are regulations in place. And Gabriela, you are somewhat of an expert on this. So I'm looking forward to our conversation where we kind of dive into the things. Like the document itself is pages and pages and pages. And even when you do an AI summary, it's still pages and pages and pages. So we're going to kind of condense it into user-friendly snippets over the course of this hour. So let's start with this. Who do these regulations apply to?
I can talk only about one directive we have in Europe. The European Union decided to promote the right to repair and published a directive in 2024. And this directive, the manufacturer has the obligation to repair. And it's independent if it's a manufacturer inside or outside the European Union. So they want to harmonize the right to repair in the European market, in the single market, so to say.
Right. So anyone who sells products in the EU, so even if you're in the United States or you're in Canada or you're in China, if you're selling into the EU, then this applies to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's quite far reaching.
Here's the concept we have in the European Union, because we want to have harmonized rules in the single market. And this means also importers need to comply with the regulations and directives we have.
Perfect. I'm all for it. I know that when they standardized the USB-C cable, you know, if I tell you having to travel with a Microsoft Surface and then you have a separate power thing, and you know, if you forget yours, nobody has one that they can lend you. And so this whole harmonizing itself was just a thing of beauty for consumers. And so this is like the next step. So so far, the right to repair only kind of fits a small range of household products. And you know, what are they, and what will and is that going to be expanded?
It will be expanded because we have a kind of, they call it working plan. The European Commission has published a work plan for 25 to 2030. What they will address in the ESPR is an abbreviation for Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, because we have the right to repair, which obliges the manufacturer to repair the product. But what needs to be repairable is defined in so-called delegated acts. It is not only one right to repair act. We do have a kind of interplay between the ESPR, the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, which says your product has to be this and this according to the design. You cannot repair any product. You need to have a repairable product, which is influenced by the design. So the ESPR says we have a washing machine, for example, a delegated act for washing machines. And in these delegated acts, it is explained what needs to be repaired, what kind of spare parts do you need to provide, and all this. In which time spare part needs to be available, which tools have the manufacturer in place to do the repair, or this is regulated in a different act.
Okay.
And the right to repair is new because now the manufacturer has to provide the repair. This is new.
Okay. So I'm going to come back to that. Do we know the timeline for adding new products? Is it all going to be by 2030?
No, they will update these programs again and again, the working programs.
Okay.
And so far, we have 10 product group listed in an annex in the Right to Repair Directive. Products groups which have been already regulated, addressed by the ESPR. And now the game is that the directive says, okay, we have repairability addressed in these delegated acts according to the ESPR. And now we say, okay, for these ones, we have the right to repair by this directive we talk about.
Okay.
It is really a bigger picture, so to say.
So if you're a manufacturer, it's up to you to go and look for your category, like to say, okay, we sell toasters and washing machines. Are these things covered? And you have to go and find where they're covered. Yeah, and I imagine it's easy to find that information.
It is. You have to go online to the European Commission's website for the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation. There you can find all products already addressed by this regulation where we have already delegated acts. And with a work program, you will see what is in the pipeline.
Okay, that sounds good. So what's behind these regulations? You talked a little bit about sustainability and the circular economy. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's the approach is to promote the sustainable consumption in a bigger picture. And it is done by increasing circularity in the economy. So you name the circular economy, it is the same thing here. But it's because we are in Europe and in the single market, it is also improving the functioning of the internal market. It wouldn't make sense to have different rules between Germany and Austria. That's why we want to have common rules for repair. That's improving the internal market is in this sense also in a kind of objective by the legislator. And they say also in the directive, when you read this, achieving a high protection for consumer, because you have to know that all the products listed in the annex are consumer products. And the directive itself, it's only for products selling to consumers. The consumer has to initiate the process for repair.
That's very different from what happens now, where if you say, oh, it'll cost me 200 euros to fix this, or I can buy a new one for 100 euros, so we're just going to throw it out. So I could see one of two things happening. Either the companies will make it so expensive to repair. It's repairable, but it's very expensive to repair. And so people will still replace, or they could say it's a badge of honor. We're going to now adopt this, and we're going to be, that company that you want to go to because it's repairable. So which of these things do you see happening?
Because we have the functioning of the European market with the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation itself. This is really established because it has a history. Eco-Design was addressed for 2 decades now. So the producers, the manufacturers knows about it. The obligation to repair is something additional, but in my understanding, these manufacturers know that they do have to do something. They don't have to offer the repair themselves. They can have a subcontractor, but the European legislator will follow up. And because it's a directive, we have to transpose this directive into national law in all these member states. So there is an enforcement on the national level as well.
Interesting.
And because in my understanding, because it's a consumer right, also other organizations will jump in, like consumer organizations.
Right.
It is to achieve, to protect the environment, and there will be follow-ups if it works or not.
So that's interesting, because I would certainly look for, if there's a badge that says, we're supporting the right to repair, in some additional way, not just the minimum. I would have a little bit more brand loyalty to that brand, because I don't want the environment ruined. I don't want all the electronics sent to African countries where people ruin their lungs burning off the rubber outside of the cables and so on. So I could see that this could be something that that companies could use as a competitive advantage.
And I agree with that. We do have companies who are really, who build durable washing machines or products which last longer. And if they can claim that they have to claim that they have to repair the product. This is regulated in the directives. They have to inform the consumers, because the right to repair has on one hand the obligation to repair, and on the other hand there's an amount of information given to the consumer to enable them to make informed choices. We do have the manufacturer who repair, but we do have also independent repairers. And for consumers, it's not easy to find this information. This is why the Commission said, okay, we need a kind of European platform for repair. And this one will try to connect repairers and consumers, but it will also inform consumers where to buy refurbished products and so on. It's really, the thinking
like
is,
an ecosystem.
Yeah, it's really a system. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to clarify a couple of things about right to repair, because I could say, like, look, I'm an older woman. I grew up in the age where we weren't taught to do these things. I'm not going to repair a washing machine. So the products must be repairable. But does that mean that consumers should be able to do repairs themselves, or that they should be able to easily find a company to repair?
The right to repair is that the consumer can go to the manufacturer and he has to offer a repair.
So they can offer it to the manufacturer, or they can delegate agents to do the repairs. Because I can't imagine somebody from like a company from China, they're not going to send representatives out, with a little toolkit on the airplane.
No, hopefully not. Yeah. And it really depends on the product. Sometimes it's not the consumer who can do the repair. And my guess it's in most of the cases, maybe not. And what is covered by the right to repair is really depending on the product itself. Sometimes it's the hose you can replace because it's broken. Sometimes it's the machine in the washing machine, or whatever it is. You find all the specifics, what needs to be repairable in these delegated acts. So it's really the directive itself. It's only 20 pages. But when you see all these delegated acts, it's like this. Really, I have this here, and it's big. So I can show you all these.
Bedtime reading.
Yeah. But it's interesting because it shows that repair has a history in the European Union, but now it's getting more promoted by the European Union.
Right. No, I like that kind of forward thinking of how are we going to make this happen. So it means that you can find a repair place, and it means that you need to be able to buy replacement parts. And does that mean also that you have to provide explanations on how to repair it? Because it's one thing to say, here's a tool, here's a part, but then it's like, it's like flat pack from IKEA, right? Like you need to have the
No, you have to provide the repair information. This you already have to do because eco-design for sustainable product regulation requires repair information for washing machine, repair information for cell phones, and all these products addressed in these delegated acts require already maintenance and repair information. And in some kinds, they are really detailed. And what these delegated acts require that the manufacturer has to provide this repair information to independent repairer. It's also important to understand it's not only the manufacturer who will repair, it's also the independent repairers. And the manufacturer has to provide or make this information, the repair and maintenance information, publicly available.
Right. Okay. So, and it's interesting is when we say household goods, I noticed that power tools fits in there, and people's mental model doesn't usually, it's like there's washing machines, toasters, and so on inside the house, but then power tools live in the garage, right? So, but those are included in there. So that's, I think it's a really good thing, because a lot of power tools do take a beating when you're using them heavily, right? You're doing repairs in the house. Anyways, so the next thing I want to talk about is there's specific implications for kind of product owners, but also for technical writers. And so can we discuss a few of these things? Like, for example, what kind of information is now required? So I saw that you have to have the name of the company. So none of these like oblique, I'm buying this off of Amazon and I don't know the name of the company because it's someplace somewhere on the other side of the world. So the identity, the address, a phone number, which is something you don't find a lot of. Like a lot of places are hiding their phone numbers now. You have to use a contact form. They have to give you an email address, a time and a cost to repair. And maybe you can talk a bit more about that, a period of validity, and then some other criteria. So, what is time and cost to repair and period of validity? What does that mean?
The time and cost of repair depends on the product, but when the repairer offer repair on the European platform for repair, they have to identify themselves. They have to say what they do. And because they don't know which part of the product is broken, they have to give a more common description what they do. But the idea is that the consumer can compare the different services. And when your product is broken and you say for yourself, I don't want to ask the manufacturer to repair my product, I go to an independent repairer, and you send your product there or describe the product, the value of the product in a different way, the independent repairer can calculate the costs. It will be a challenge how it will work, yes. But we do have experience already because at least in Germany and other European countries, there are places where you can bring your product and they repair it, other than the manufacturer himself or herself.
Okay, so this is to prevent you from taking your power tools somewhere and then they say, 6 months and 500 euros. So this is to kind of control all of that. You know ahead of time how long it should take and what the cost should be. I like that. Okay. And
kind of competition between repairers and manufacturers. They want to, the European Union want to have a kind of functioning market for repair as well.
Well, I like that they're creating this platform. So it's like a one-stop shop. If I go there, I can tell you who's where to find things all in one place. So that's, I think, going to eliminate one big barrier for consumers who otherwise start like, I don't even know, like how often do you get one of those products where it's got a little insert inside, the insert gets lost, And then
Yeah.
you're thinking, I don't even remember, how to get in touch with these people. And now you can go somewhere and find it. So I'm hoping they'll have a way that you can like search by model number or something like that.
This is what is foreseen in these European platform for repair. Search by model number, there are different search ways, and they say in the directive it should be easy for consumer to find it and accessible. Yeah.
So now what about the documentation itself? Because we've got a lot of content people that are interested in knowing how is this going to affect my job. So can you just run through a few of the things that tech writers are going to need to know?
You really need to have a look on a product specific level, and I can read it for the mobile phones because we published a white paper, tekom, together with iFixes, and there we looked at 2 different examples where these really specific delegated acts regarding the information to be provided by technical communicators are specified. And it's, I don't know, for the smartphones, it's 2 pages long.
Okay.
So really, really detailed. So that you, availability of spare parts. It's addressed under design for repair and reuse, and the availability of spare parts is regulated. What needs to be available? It's specific. Then access to repair and maintenance information, disassembly map or exploded view, for example. It's really, it's a long list. We wouldn't have time to go through it. But when you are a tech, when you work for a company which is in the pipeline for products that will be regulated, you need to be aware that in the delegated acts, it's specified what you have to do. And not only by the directive for repair, also by the eco-design for sustainable products regulation.
What's interesting about this to me is that, so there's a phenomenon in the United States where California, for example, I'm just using this one example, they had some regulation for car emissions. And the California market is large enough that it became the de facto standard for the whole country, because you're not going to make cars that have terrible emissions for the rest of the country and then a different version of it for California. So I'm thinking that, a lot of product managers kind of go like, oh, this content stuff, just put it together. The documentation, just put it together. And now the tech writer actually has ammunition to go back and say, look, we have to do this anyways for them. Let's just do it across the board. And everyone's going to benefit from it, because there's like no more sloppy documentation, because you can go and find that checklist. And I noticed that they have things like plain language. You have to use active voice. You have to have thorough repair information. As you said, you need to have visual as well as text-based content like these exploded parts views. And you have to check that the documentation doesn't contradict what's in the directive or the other acts, if you will. So if you go and look at what's in there and say, we're going to do this anyways, let's do this, in a quality way, and then everyone benefits.
Yeah, that's completely right. And even the manufacturer who does a good documentation can differentiate from other manufacturers, because we have it's a new tool here. It's a repairability score. They try to evaluate products and give them a high score if repairability, it's not likely, but it's easier to do. And the directive says that the member states have to offer something to promote repair on different levels. Not only that the manufacturer is obliged to offer repair, it's also that the member states themselves, they can introduce new tools, so to say. And we do have the score itself for cell phones. For example, France is using it. And when you go to a shop, you see a new label And you have a score of 8 for a good phone, good repairable phone.
I like it.
Yeah, it's
I
everything wants to shift into the direction, but we need also to understand it's not only about repairability, because normally consumers do not want to be busy with repair. They want to have long-lasting products. So durability is always first, and second is repairability.
Interesting. I'm going to watch this closely, how this plays out. And I'm thinking about when I moved to the UK, and I would see this little chart whenever you were going to rent someplace, and it would show you kind of like the energy score. In other words, this is how high your heating bill will be. And so to be able to look at this a label and have the durability and the fixability, repairability right there, it saves you a lot of time kind of reading reviews and doing your homework on the web, because we do that now, right? We look these things up, especially for high ticket items. So that's going to be interesting to watch how this plays out. So there is this kind of the repairability has this period of validity. Now, I read that there's this like a 7-year time span on having parts available for repair, and that automatically means that there's 7 years of documentation that you need to keep, because if you have the parts, you have to have the documentation on how to repair it. So what does that mean for content operations? Because a lot of companies are just struggling now to keep like one set of documents. You've got 4 product lines, and then you have 4 products within that product line. Now you've got 16 products, and even just keeping one version alive becomes complicated. So what happens when you have 7 that replicated by 7 years? What does that mean for content operations?
You have to do something not only for the repairability, because we have a new instrument in the European market. It's a digital product passport, and this passport needs to be provided according to the Eco Design for Sustainable Product Regulation. So in the next year, the market will change in terms of documentation, because you need to provide digital information.
Okay.
And it depends on the product, how long this digital product passport with information for repair needs to be provided, but it needs to be up to date anyway. So what we learned is get ready, clean, all the information management needs to be up to date in a way, because you need the information. It's required. It will be required. If you want to sell something, you need to comply with the regulation. And it's not only the Eco Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, not only for environmental information, it will be also relevant for safety information. We do have kind of product regulations in the European market, for example, for medical devices or for machinery and so on. And all these products will, in the next future, have this digital product passport with information which needs to be up to date.
Right.
How to do it? It's a big piece.
Yeah, it's huge. I'm, coming from that background, I can imagine that it's that's huge when it comes to properly managing your content. And I say properly because there are a lot of places that try to do things like with a shortcut, and it doesn't really matter because it's going to be irrelevant in 6 months. And now you have to think, it's almost like you have a digital passport for your documentation itself. Like you need to have that certification that this is up to date, it's managed well, it's the right version. It's so I know that timely publication is one of those things. Like you have to publish it within 1 month, is it, of your like releasing the product. So you can't release the product and say documentation to come. You have to do it within 1 month.
Part of the product.
You're going to have version control. So that means good governance.
Yeah.
You're going to need a governance model, and you're going to need to have good metadata because you need to be able to disambiguate between your products. Like, this is version 17.1, this is version 17.2, this is version 12.3, whatever it is. Or, this name versus that name. This is the, I don't know, Samsung Galaxy 25, and then the 26 and 27, and the deluxe version versus the basic version. And then how do you distribute this to all of your independent repairers? Are you going to have a content hub where they have to come and get it, or do you have to distribute it? And then you've got to do this registration with the online platform for repair. So when I think about all those things, I'm going like, okay, if you haven't gotten your documentation management together, this is the time to think about it. Well, you should have been thinking about it last year, but if you didn't now.
Yeah. And it's really what we learn is that companies they get aware of it. But what we have in our conferences is really that the presentations are always by authorities say, do it now, because it takes time. And the access to the information by the digital product passport, it's not only by the customers, it is also by the authorities. So the idea is to have a fairer competition in the European market. At the borders, that only products come into the European Union checked by the customers authorities, and inside the European Union by the market surveillance authorities.
Right.
So it's easier to have it with a digital product passport because you need to register this passport also with the repair information. So it's in this box, and then the authorities have access to this documentation and can control, is this product compliant or not? Or is the documentation missing? And then it's so much easier in the future.
Now, because we're talking about the EU, are we talking about multiple languages as well? Like, do you have to... Yeah. Oh,
this
interesting.
will not change. And we do have for the machinery, for example, the language in which the documentation has to be will be decided on the national level by the member state itself. So Germany will carry documentation, I guess, in German. Maybe, I don't know if there is any other language they also consider. And Austria and whoever is...
Like Belgium will have
Denmark or Italy or... It will be decided by the member states. It might be easier then because you have the tools now, and you don't have to provide in paper form. It's only digital. And the European Union wants to have a central registry for the digital product passport, but your data are on your server. It's only the connection. So there is a product identifier, what you named before. It's all these identification things. The manufacturer has to be identifiable. The product on which level needs to be decided, batch level, serial number, or whatever. And then all the information remains in the domain of the customer, of the manufacturer.
Okay. That's interesting, because if you think about even a global platform like Amazon and how many vendors they have, that's a huge number. The other thing that just struck me is that sometimes you see people kind of joking about bad translations from, for example, Chinese into English. And so they haven't really spent money on the translations. And so, you kind of, everyone laughs, hee hee ha ha, although it's equally the other way around. And they laugh about the English into Chinese translations, for example. And so I'm wondering if this is going to improve the quality of the translations, and maybe other countries are going to start demanding that, like, hey, if we have to spend money on good translations, we demand that same courtesy, and maybe it's going to improve documentation around the world.
Yeah, we do have international standards for the information for use. It's the 82079 series, the ISO IEC series. And everything is in there, the information management, content related, also addressing the repair content, but also the translation, that we need qualified people to do it. And I don't know how much AI will help us for the translation, but what I have seen so far is still that I think we need at least human oversight to read the text. It makes sense or not, yes. Well, and I don't know how many people we have to with complaints about the text isn't readable. I don't understand what I need to do. And for the independent repairers, it's also it's a burden to have documentation which doesn't make sense. Then you can't repair it.
What I see, so this has multiple layers, of course, but you can have tech writers, but are they good tech writers? Are they trained? Like, do they understand how to write a good procedure? So if that's your baseline, right? Is the writing good? Is the editorial good? Is the document structured well? But then on top of that, then you've got the now, do we have it translated and so on? Do we have all that? And then, you can layer on top and on top, do you have a better user experience? Do we have exploded parts that link to the order form and so on? Like, do you have that capability to make that happen? So I know that, some CMSs are more suited to that, or they have that capability built in and others don't. So, those are the kinds of things that you start thinking about internally. So that's going to be kind of an interesting one. I notice, oh, go ahead.
And in my understanding, the job for the technical communicator gets more support. It is more required because we need information about the product to maintain it, to recycle it, to use it in a proper way. All this is something which is really necessary to extend the lifetime of the product, to close circuits, to save resources. And the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation really counts on information requirements. So we will have a shift. More information is required. And when you read the text, what the obligations are for the manufacturer, it's still, he is in charge of clear, understandable text, instructions for use, they call it there. Right. And it's all in the regulation. So the legislators, they know we need a documentation, a proper documentation, otherwise we cannot achieve. And the goals are really, it's a sustainability goals. It's not something really small. No, it's something really big we strive for.
It sounds like it, very much so. And if people want to find out more information, we will send out some resources through email tomorrow. There is a white paper from tekom. I think you were one of the authors, called Promoting the Repair of Goods. And what's in that white paper?
We do explain the directive. That's the core of the white paper, because we wanted to make our community aware of the directive and how it is connected to the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation and to other directives. But we also give a kind of bigger picture. We address the regulations in the States, but only mentioning it. That's repair isn't something new. No, we do have experience. And we could convince iFixit to give their input. They do have input with repair, for sure. And they have also kind of some thoughts. They put thoughts together how to write a good and easy to read repair information. It's a bit more general, but maybe it helps us. And we do also have a kind of thought analysis, what to do when something goes wrong. And we really try to help to understand what's going on in Europe in terms of repair.
So I do have a couple of other questions, but I'm going to hold them because I want to go to some questions from our audience. We've got a couple of them here. So the first one is from Justin, and he asks, which industries do you think would benefit from learning about right to repair early on? And is the EU talking with organizations already?
Yes, they do talk about with the organizations, and you have to keep in mind that the eco-design regulation, and before we had the regulation, we had directives. There, the industry was or is involved. We really have a structured process for these delegated acts. It sounds sometimes confusing, but you just need to understand the eco-design for sustainable product regulation gives the frame.
Mm-hmm.
But for each product, you need to go into discussions with the stakeholders who are involved, with the manufacturers, with the market surveillance. And sometimes the industry or people look if all the criteria are met, independent research institutes, and they all sit together and work on these delegated acts.
Okay.
So it's nothing only the legislator have on the table and they decide on the theoretical level what should be repaired by when you have a broken phone. No, it's the industry who is involved.
So, you know what, which industry we didn't talk about, which is outside of this directive, but it's also important to remember is for medical devices, there's something about like a 10-year repairability window. So anyone who's selling medical devices into the EU has to think about that as well. And that comes under a different, but I'm sure if you did an AI search, you could surface all of that information. But we shouldn't forget about them.
And the medical devices are not in the scope of the ESPR.
No, they're not.
Why they are excluded? There are not so many, maybe, which are, I don't know, I just don't know, I have to say. Maybe they have their own regulations in terms of repairability.
They do.
I didn't understand why it was excluded because it's so explicit. Machinery is in. So many products of the new legislated framework are in, but medical devices not.
So I think right now, anyways, because it's already covered elsewhere, it's like, why complicate your life? And it's covered over there. But I think that if you're a product owner or a technical communicator who is working on medical devices, this is your wake-up call to go and check what those regulations are, because what you don't want is to be either stopped at the border or, you know, have your goods turned away or be subject to penalties. And I want to take another question before we talk about penalties, but if we have time, I'd like to talk about that because there are penalties in the works. So Nigel asks, what would you say are the biggest challenges that manufacturers face when preparing for right to repair requirements? I think we've covered some of that, but he asked a kind of a follow-on question, which is, can you mention how TechDoc's teams can interact with the IPCs?
No. No, I can't say how they can do it. I don't know if the white paper helps, but no.
Okay, well, that was short and sweet and simple. The biggest challenges that manufacturers face when they're preparing for right to repair requirements, I would say, this is my opinion, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong or expand on it. So they have to think about the design, first of all. Then, so they're right from engineering specs, right? That you have to design for durability and repairability. And then it's the explanation of it. And it's making sure that you have parts on hand to be able to, maybe before you just shipped it, and you knew people were going to throw it away, so you didn't have a lot of spare parts. Whereas now you need to think of what parts might wear out, what parts do we keep on hand. now we have to write the instructions to actually tell people how to do this. And we, now you have inventory and those things. So I think that there's like the design and manufacturing part, but then there's also the communication part and the compliance with regulations parts.
Why I'm so reluctant to name this, most of it is regulated because we have the design right, the right to repair and the eco design. There, all what you most of what you mentioned is written there.
Okay.
And challenge. So you have to keep up to date what is written in the delegated acts, which is relevant for your product. But what I'm struggling with, how to get ready to have spare parts in place, all this management of repair. Is so it depends really on where you are. Do you have your spare parts? What kind of tools do you need? What kind of documentation? And you need to have a product process in place.
Right.
But for me, because I don't work for a manufacturer, it's specific.
Right.
But sure, you need to do. You need to get prepared having spare parts, but first you need to adapt the design described by the Eco Design for Sustainable Product Regulation and these delegated acts.
Right.
And the design is crucial. When you do not have the design for repairability, you cannot repair. And also, what we mentioned in our white paper is that we said we have the right to repair not because repair is the most funniest thing in the world. No, it's only to save resources. It's not to keep people busy. And if the repair needs more resources than buying a new product, then repair doesn't make sense.
If I go back many years ago, I remember buying a blow dryer, to dry my hair, and it lasted me for 10 years. And then one day I can't remember if I dropped it or something, but then, it short circuited. And then after that, I don't think I had one that lasted more than 2 years because everyone, it was like race to the bottom. And the amount of money that I paid for that first one, even many years later, it was still cheaper. So there was that whole thing of we build things for planned obsolescence. We want it to last a few years because then they will buy another one. And this turning it on its head to say we need to build in durability, that's going to affect the price, obviously, because they have to use a little bit better materials, they have to design better and so on. But at the same time, it's going to last longer. So instead of buying three for 10 euros a piece, you buy one for 30 euros and it lasts you as long as those three did. I think it should be a neutral like a neutral cost in the end for the consumer. But what do I know? I'm not an economist.
but that's the direction we want to go. The durability is key for everything. It's hard to give information when you compare durability, it really depends how you use a product. But when you buy a product, we want to give information how long it will last. And if I say in Europe, it will be required for some products to say how long will it last. And the premature obsolescence isn't allowed anymore. For some products, they want to regulate this as well, just to shift or to push manufacturers and the whole market into a different direction.
So one of the things that one of the news stories I remember reading was about how Dyson wanted to sell their company, and some big conglomerate took a look and said, well, we can't because you've made or we don't want to buy it because you've made the vacuum cleaners last so long that, they don't break down fast enough. So we're not buying your company. And I thought that's really very kind of short-sighted, but that's part of that whole, what do they call those? not venture capital, these investment firms that come in and they do all these things and pay a lot of money to shareholders and then abandon the company, leaving them saddled with debt. So I'm imagining we're trying to go away from that model, and maybe this is the turning point for it. We've got about 10 minutes left, and we don't have to go up to the hour, but I wanted to talk about penalties, because it's you know that there's a product manager out there who going like, yeah, I know that they have this thing, but it's we're going to shortcut it anyways. What harm is it? And I want to know what the actual harm is. You know, what are the consequences if you don't comply?
I don't know. We do have penalties, but it's still blur how big they are, how high they are. But there will be penalties are addressed in the directive. And what I would say these days is really, because we will have the digital product passport, it will be really, you will get manufacturers who are not compliant, which products are not compliant, easier. So it will cost you a lot of money if your product is not compliant, because they can block the import into the European Union, or you have to take away the products from the market. And for me, it gets more critical. In the last years, we had less people for the market surveillance and so on. So really the authorities, they didn't have enough resources. But with the instrument of the digital product passport, they have a tool. And because the information, the technical documentation is part of the digital product passport, it is easy to find the manufacturer, the product, which have no technical documentation compliant with the regulation. And
does someone need to make a complaint? Like, I bought this thing and I can't figure out how to use it, and the repairability is not up to par, and then they make a complaint and then they get investigated? Or is there a more systematic approach, maybe because of this digital passport?
I don't know how the national authorities will go forward, but what you can always do is activate the consumer organizations, because they will represent you, and they have an interest in that these products are compliant and help consumers to get their right. And it's good that they call it the right to repair, because it implies there is a right for the consumer.
Oh, that's very good.
And there is regulation around that it's not easy to say, oh, my product is not repairable, or this is so broken, it's not, I can't do it. The directive itself is prepared for these cases as well.
Interesting.
And it will start in end of this month. So it's in force for a long time, but we had the transition period, and on the 31st of July, it is applicable.
That's very good. So then if you are shipping non-compliant things in August, be prepared.
Yeah. I hope it. And it's not easy, but the papers are there. What you need to deliver is there. So it's not hidden, but you need to search for it.
Right.
And what we can do with the tomorrow is to put together, it's maybe 2 or 3 web pages you need to know to find the directive itself you need, and then to have access to these delegated acts for the washing machines, and it's easy to find. It's not that you need hours to search for it. You just need to know what you need to search for.
So maybe when Harry sends out the white paper tomorrow, he can also include a few of those links so that it makes it easier for people to find what they need to know.
Yeah, and these links are in the white paper itself.
Ah, perfect.
Really explained. And if people do not find something, let me know, then I can try to help, because it's I think that the European Commission is behind the information to provide. They make a good job. They really try to give manufacturers the information they need. It's the national associations who represent the industry in Europe do not have the right information. But it's really the lobbying for the different branches is really, they do they're lobbying in Brussels, so they have papers ready, information ready. They should.
Right, right. Okay. Well, thank you so much. We don't have any more questions, so I think we've kind of exhausted the topic as far as we can take it in a 1 hour webinar. So I want to thank you so much for joining us and lending your expertise. And I'm going to turn it over to Harry to do whatever housekeeping he needs to do.
Well, to be honest, I think you pretty much nailed it there. No, but genuinely, thank you very much for your time, Dr. Gabriela, Dr. Fleischer, sorry. Thank you very much, and Rahel as well. Thank you very much for your time. And again, thank you for all the questions that you put in chat. Thank you for your attendance. And yeah, look forward to sending out that email tomorrow with all the links and the sort of post catch up. And again, thank you very much and look forward to the next one. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.